Hi, I'm Seb and I make stuff. Today we're going to be continuing a while beyond the Witchlight Carnival build with our Ticketbooth and Calliope playing music to entertain our guests as they enter the Witchlight Carnival. A silver statue of a dancing fairy is mounted on the roof of this ticket booth and surrounded by fluttering butterflies. The booth is decorated with an animated depiction of the night sky, with shooting stars arcing across it. A merry tune spills forth from an instrument on the back of a brightly painted wagon. A monkey wearing a cloak covered with buttons turns the handle of the wagon's rear, sending music into the air from rows of golden whistles. I started off on tinkercad.com, where I built the basic frame and shape of the Calliope. Once I'd hollowed it out, I got to building the rows of golden whistles, which was essentially multiplying a cylinder and lining them up. Adding one more to the top, and a few of these little details around the side before exporting it as an STL. Once I downloaded the model, I brought it into Chitterbox and added some wheels that I downloaded from Thingiverse off a wagon. I sized these up and then printed out the model. Once printed, I gave it a grey primer and a zenithal highlight with wraithbone white. And now for the paint job. So I opened up a reference image and got going. Starting with a red contrast paint with a 50-50 dilution with contrast medium, I gave the entire thing a base. I came in with a diluted Cygor brown to add a little bit of differentiation to the inside of the Calliope. And then used a Gorgrunter brown on the wheels for a lighter tone. I then grabbed the Retributor Armor gold paint by Citadel and started to hit the whistles and some of the other details that I wanted to pop, including the little orb and the base. Now that all the primary colours were in, it was time to add these little details. I came in with a white base coat and a tiny brush and a lot of patience. Coming back in at the end with some more red to straighten up these edges. Now for the final details. I originally tried to do this with a paintbrush, but it was kind of annoying, so I went with a fine tip marker, and this worked brilliantly. I've not used a pen on a miniature before, but this worked brilliantly and made these fine details a lot easier to do. Next up, I came in with a Nuln oil to hit some of the metal parts just to give them a little bit of shade, before coming back in with the final details, again using the felt tip marker. Alright, the Calliope's looking pretty good. I'll let that dry and come back in with some detail cleanup later on. Now moving on to the ticket booth. In the text, we can read that the booth is decorated with an animated depiction of the night sky, with shooting stars arcing across it. So I'll take a collection of blues and start painting them on with a very wet brush, ranging from light to dark as I go up the booth. I'll use my palette and the watered down brush to continue to add these and wet blend them as I keep mixing the paints together. As I get darker, the higher I move up the booth, eventually adding a little bit of black into the mix. Now that we've got a nice background base for the night, we'll start adding in some stars. A couple of larger stars, and then just a few white specks over the rest of the booth, adding in a shooting star from time to time. A light trail, and then a little bright star in the front will do the trick. Mimicking this around the rest of the booth, and then finally adding in a sign. Whenever I do sign writing, I tend to start with the middle letter first, just to help with my spacing. Once I add the last few details, I'll come back in with that white and clean up my inevitable mistakes. And now for that silver statue of a dancing fairy mounted to the roof of the ticket booth. I found this dancing Tinkerbell on Thingiverse and printed it out. I clipped off the top of this roof that I've printed out from my Hagglethorn Hollow tower and painted the fairy with Stormhost silver before gluing her into the hole in the roof and adding a layer of Nuln Oil to give her some shadows. And now for the final detail, the fluttering butterflies that surround the booth. I grabbed out these absolutely tiny miniatures that I found on Thingiverse, I'll have the link in the description, and I hit them with a Wraithbone white and then some contrast paints, before using some super glue and tweezers to glue them into place all over the booth. Making sure to put at least one on the fairy. This may be super fiddly, tiny little work, but it's actually really quite fun fitting them all into place, and I feel like it adds an element of story to everything I build with these tiny details, and is worth it for the end result. Now that we have that entryway set up, it's time to get the rest of the rides going, and we've still got the big top to set up. We've got quite a lot of work yet on the Witchlight Carnival. I hope you've liked this week's build. All the files will be available in the description to be downloaded for free from Thingiverse. If you're interested in seeing how I made the carnival booth, check out my previous video, where I go in depth on building these carnival booths using Chitterbox to kit bash other 3D models. I have a few more carnival builds planned, but now that I've actually had a chance to read the module, I'm inspired by the Ferywild beyond the carnival. So let's see what we can build in the wild beyond the Witchlight.